My husband's entire family had somehow been erased. Not from life, of course, from a wedding, a day meant to bind families together. But the version of that day we received told a different story, one that was clean, curated, and most of all, selective. We were there in person, but not in memory, at least not in Danny's. I'm Mira, 34, quiet in crowds but sharp with details. I design visual identities for a living, which means I spend my days helping companies decide how they want to be seen. I know how images work. I know how stories are shaped, not just by what you include, but by what you leave out. Eli, my husband, is the opposite, grounded, steady. Raised by a family who believed in listening more than speaking. They don't fight, they endure. They show love through reliability, through showing up again and again without needing thanks. That's the kind of strength I fell in love with. So when Danny, Eli's sister, got married, we all showed up. No questions, no fuss. We followed every one of her rules. She'd sent a 6-page PDF a month before, filled with instructions, color schemes, speech guidelines, dress codes, phone policies. It read more like a production brief than a wedding invite, but we complied. I helped my mother-in-law find a dress in a dusty blush that met Danny's palette restrictions. Eli bought a new tie just to blend in. Even Uncle Raymond, who wears sneakers to everything, dusted off leather shoes. The day came and went. Danny beamed naturally, the center of her own orbit. Every speech highlighted her career, her style, her choices. Her new in-laws spoke. Her friends toasted. Her side of the family took group photos with practiced grace. Our side was quieter. But we were there. We clapped, laughed, danced politely. We left early, as instructed. Then came the video. A few weeks later, Danny shared it in the family group chat. So proud of how this turned out. Love you all, she wrote with 3 heart emojis. Eli and I watched it on a rainy Sunday afternoon curled up on the couch. The footage was stunning. Golden hour light, soft transitions, slow motion laughter. But about 5 minutes in, I noticed something odd. Eli's parents weren't in it. Neither were his cousins, not even us. I scanned the background of every scene. Nothing. I paused, rewound, froze the frame. There was no trace of us. We hadn't been blurred or cropped. We had simply been bypassed. At first, I tried to explain it away. Maybe this is just a trailer, I asked Eli. He shrugged. Let's watch the whole thing. We did. 12 minutes, dozens of people. Danny from every angle. Her husband smiling beside her. The maid of honor wiping tears, but nothing, not one glimpse, of us. I sent Danny a message, casual and curious. Hey, do you have a version that shows the rest of the family? My mom would love to see some of us in there. Her reply was almost instant. That was the full cut? I hesitated, then replied again. We're not in it at all. She wrote back, That's strange. Maybe the videographer missed your side? And that was it. No offer to check the raw footage, no apology. Just a shrug, digital, efficient, final. I looked at Eli. He stared at the screen, his expression unreadable. He didn't say a word. But the silence between us felt loud. She had erased us, not just visually, intentionally. She had reshaped the memory so we didn't exist in it. We didn't argue, didn't confront. We just sat there, letting it settle. But I tucked it away, not out of anger, out of preparation, because our wedding was coming, and in that silence I started planning. I tried not to obsess over it. I told myself it was just a video, just one version of a day we had already lived. But the more I sat with it, the more it burned. Because it wasn't just a video, it was the official record, the final word. A 12-minute highlight reel meant to capture something permanent. And we were simply not part of that permanence. Eli never spoke about it again. He carried the disappointment the way his whole family carried things. Quietly, inward, like a weight you adapt to. But I saw it in the way he became a little more reserved around Danny, how his answers shortened whenever she called. He wasn't angry, just tired. And yet his mother still hoped. A week after we'd watched the video, she called me while Eli was at work. "Did you see the wedding footage?" she asked cautiously. Her voice was light but strained. I said yes. "I thought maybe there's another version," she continued, "something longer. I kept looking for a shot of the family table, or maybe the part where we took photos under the tree. Remember that tree?" I did. It had pink lights woven through the branches. I remembered the photo vividly. Danny had posed us like chess pieces, moving us into angles for best lighting. I hesitated. "I'll check with her," I said gently, but I didn't. Instead, I emailed the videographer, not Danny, Des. I knew where that would go. I found the company's public contact and wrote a polite inquiry explaining that we were family and hoping there was more footage we hadn't seen. The response came a day later from the post-production lead. All final edits were delivered to the client per specific instructions. Unfortunately, unused footage is not archived past 30 days. Per specific instructions. I sat with those words for a long time. Specific instructions. That meant it wasn't just omission, it was a directive. She had gone through the footage, clip by clip, and made deliberate choices about who stayed and who vanished. That stung in a way I hadn't expected, not because I craved the spotlight, but because I had shown up. We all had, with good intentions, respectful energy, and the kind of deference Danny always seemed to require. And it wasn't enough. We didn't fit the brand. Danny had always carried herself like a lifestyle blog brought to life, curated, aesthetic, performative. She called herself a digital strategist, but really she was a professional self-marketer. Everything she shared online was polished, filtered, cropped to fit a narrative of effortless perfection. And her wedding? That had been her magnum opus. One more piece of content to control. We weren't on brand, and so we were trimmed out, like bad background noise. Eli's mom never brought it up again after that call, but the way she stopped talking about the wedding at all told me she understood. She felt it too, that quiet ache of being erased by your own family. I started noticing the patterns after that. Danny interrupting Eli during phone calls, Danny calling her in-laws by the wrong names, never bothering to correct herself, Danny planning family dinners that always seemed to fall on nights we told her we were unavailable. She wasn't mean, she was dismissive. There's a difference. One is emotional, the other surgical. And that's when I realized this wasn't about the wedding. It was about erasure. Systematic, subtle erasure. Over time, through hundreds of tiny actions that said, "You don't matter as much." That's what made it hurt, not the lack of footage, the lack of care. It stayed with me in quiet moments, folding laundry, driving to work, brushing my teeth. And in those moments, something started to shift. Not bitterness, not quite. More like clarity. A clear, cold decision forming at the edge of my patience. I didn't want to argue with her. I didn't need her to admit anything. I just wanted the weight to settle back where it belonged. And then I remembered Eli and I were getting married too. Soon, that's when the clarity sharpened into resolve. She had made her cut, I was going to make mine. I didn't plan the revenge overnight. It came together slowly, like a strategy drawn from memory. I knew I didn't want drama. No confrontation, no speeches or raised voices. Just the same calm, deliberate silence she had used on us. Only this time it would speak volumes. Eli and I had been planning our wedding with a sense of simplicity from the start. We didn't want spectacle, no huge guest list, no overproduced moments, just sincerity and something we could look back on and still recognize ourselves in. But now that sincerity included something else, the chance to respond, not lash out, just respond. One night after dinner, I brought it up to Eli. We were doing the dishes, the kitchen smelled like roasted garlic, and the music was low. Some instrumental playlist we always forgot the name of. "What would you say?" I asked carefully, if I said I had an idea about Danny? He glanced at me. What kind of idea? About the wedding, I said, about how to handle her. He didn't speak. He dried a glass, waiting. I explained it slowly, not out of malice, but logic. What if we invited her and Mum made her think she was being celebrated when in fact we were giving her a mirror? What if we made her the focus of attention during the event only to remove her from the final version entirely? She'll pose, I said. She'll smile, think she's front and center, but when the video goes out, she'll be gone, just like she did to us. Eli looked at me for a long moment. That's cold, he said. I nodded. It's fair. He didn't argue. He rinsed the last plate, placed it on the rack, and said, if you're sure, I'll support you. I began planning the next day. The first step was the videographer. I didn't want a big commercial crew. I found a local team known for doing indie films and intimate events. People who understood story, not just aesthetics. At our first meeting, I laid out the vision. I was honest. There's one guest, I said, who I'd like you to focus on. Not to include, but to exclude. I want her to feel seen, followed, noticed. But in the final edit, she won't be there. Jonah, the lead videographer, leaned back in his chair. He was young, but sharp. You want her to remember the cameras, he said slowly, but then realized later she was never in the final story. Exactly. He gave a thoughtful nod. I can do that. We met twice more to refine it. We agreed on signals, where to position lenses, how to tilt them to keep her just off frame in crowd scenes, and which moments to let her notice being filmed, only for those clips to disappear later. Next came the invitation. We debated for days whether to invite her at all. But in the end, we needed her to show up, to want to be there, so we sent the invite. Subtly misspelled. Danny instead of Danny. Just enough to irk her, to make her feel overlooked before she even arrived. She responded instantly. Love the invite. FYI, it's Danny with an I, not a Y. Of course it was. On the day of the wedding, she showed up early. White cocktail dress, nude heels, hair pinned into a complicated bun that looked just messy enough to seem effortless. She hugged Eli like a politician, air-kissed my cheek, then proceeded to work the room, as if she were the maid of honor instead of a reluctant guest. And the cameras followed, not in a suspicious way, just enough. Jonah and his team did it perfectly. They gave her the illusion of importance, slow pans, close-ups, the occasional nod of acknowledgement as she posed mid-laugh with a wine glass. I watched her from across the garden as she leaned into the lens, head tilted like a model in an ad campaign. She believed it all, believed she was being captured, honored, preserved. When the reception began, she seated herself toward the front, just close enough to the action to feel important. She even stood and offered a toast midway through dinner, unscheduled, unasked for. Eli and I watched her raise her glass. The cameras didn't follow. Later, she pulled me aside near the photo booth. Honestly, Mira, she said, this is beautiful. So elegant, understated, and I swear I've seen your team catch like 50 angles of me already. I sipped my champagne. They're professionals, I said with a small smile. And they were. By the end of the night, Danny had probably been filmed more than any other guest, and not a second of it would remain. Weddings are strange things. You plan them down to the last napkin fold, but the real power lives in the moments you can't schedule. The glances, the silences, the things left unsaid. That's where this plan thrived. Danny arrived a full 20 minutes early, as I knew she would. She never missed a chance to be early to a moment that wasn't hers. She wore a tailored ivory dress, cocktail length, but close enough to bridal territory to make a statement. She walked in with a confident little sway, pausing just slightly so the entrance wouldn't go unnoticed. The first person she spotted was our lead videographer, Jonah. Hi, she smiled, adjusting her posture as if by instinct. Are you getting my good side? Jonah, as briefed, returned a warm, professional nod. Both sides are good sides. She laughed lightly, already convinced she was winning. The ceremony took place under an arch of soft eucalyptus and white roses. Danny sat herself second row, not where her name card placed her. Third row, left side, but she subtly moved it, pretending it was a mistake. I didn't correct her. The cameras caught her adjusting her seat. They also caught her practicing her reaction faces, dabbing the corner of her eye, tilting her head at key emotional beats. Always just slightly overperformed. Jonah and his team captured it all. Beautifully. As the ceremony unfolded, I barely looked at her. I focused on Eli, on our vows, on the air between us. But I could sense her energy hovering just outside our shared space, like a ghost trying to photobomb a memory that wasn't hers. During the cocktail hour, Danny circled the garden. She inserted herself into conversations, posed near floral arrangements, and casually asked where the B-roll station was, in her word, not ours. We're going to want plenty of that content, she said, as if she were co-producing the event. Jonah smiled politely, already on it. And he was, just not in the way she expected. Every time Danny turned to the camera, they filmed her, framed her perfectly, held the shot long enough for her to notice, then gently panned away at the moment she thought they were committing her to memory. She posed with the cake. Gone. She stood by the guest book. Gone. She danced during the first set. Gone. At the reception, she made a move I half expected, an impromptu toast. She clinked her glass just loud enough to gather attention. Can I just say, this day is so Mira and Eli. So understated, so stylish, so thoughtful, she began, eyes scanning the room for validation. You two really show how love doesn't need an audience to be real. But I hope the cameras are catching this because it's too good not to remember. People clapped politely. Eli and I smiled. Jonah gave her a thumbs up. But no one was filming, not anymore. The cameras had turned toward the band, toward the candles flickering on tables, toward a child chasing a firefly near the edge of the garden. Danny went on speaking for another minute, thinking her moment had landed. By the time dinner ended, she was glowing, confident. She pulled me aside before dessert. You know, I've been filmed a lot today, she said. I feel like the star of a documentary. I met her gaze and offered the smallest smile. We wanted everyone to feel seen. And then without skipping a beat, I walked away. The edit came 2 weeks later. Jonah sent the first cut with a quiet email. It's ready. She's gone. I watched it alone the first time, then again with Eli. It was beautiful, not just aesthetically, but emotionally. It felt like us, like the day we'd actually lived. The camera moved with intention, focusing on the small, meaningful gestures. Eli's father straightening his tie before the ceremony. My mother tracing her thumb over my cheek one last time. The way our hands found each other beneath the table when no one was looking. Danny was nowhere. No white dress, no speech, no laughter, no erasure required. Just exclusion before the cut. When we sent the video to family, the responses were emotional. Eli's parents cried. My sister texted, "You look like the future in this." Friends reposted it, praising its quiet elegance. Danny texted Eli a few days later. Weird, I don't think I'm in the wedding video. Maybe I missed the camera somehow? He replied, could be. She didn't press. She never mentioned it again. And that, perhaps, was the best part. No confrontation, no drama. Just the quiet, sinking realization that for once, she had been the one left out of the memory. Not by accident, not by mistake, by design. I didn't expect an explosion. Danny isn't built for direct conflict. She doesn't lash out or throw scenes. She curates. She adjusts. She rewrites the script quietly and then pretends the original never existed. So when she texted Eli days after the wedding video went out, just a single offhand line, I knew that was all we were going to get. Weird, I don't think I'm in the wedding video. Maybe I missed the camera somehow. He stared at his phone for a long time, then typed, "Could be." That was it. She didn't ask again. She didn't call. She didn't bring it up at the next family dinner or try to corner me for an explanation. She just slipped back into her version of reality, one where questions are dangerous and silences are safer. But I know she noticed, and I know it landed. Because being erased, even politely, carries weight. The aftermath was quieter than I thought it would be. Eli's parents called us the day after they saw the video. His mom's voice cracked when she spoke. "You made us feel so loved," she said. "Thank you for including us, for really seeing us." I didn't tell her what we'd done, not the full story. I didn't need to. That wasn't the point. The point was this: we had corrected the record, not through confrontation, but through creation. We had taken the same scalpel Danny used to cut us out, and used it with more precision, more empathy, and more restraint. Because revenge isn't about returning pain, it's about restoring balance. I think about that often now, how easy it would have been to expose her, to call her out, to share screenshots, to make the hurt public. But that's not how Eli and I live. We don't burn bridges, we just stop crossing them. There's a strength in quiet action, in letting someone figure out for themselves what they've lost. And what Danny lost wasn't just a place in our wedding video. It was a place in the emotional architecture of our lives. She used to occupy space. Now she floats in the periphery, weightless. I still see her occasionally. At family gatherings, holidays, birthdays, she shows up late, leaves early. Her conversation is always framed. Recent projects, new deals, things she's buying or renovating. She still performs. But something about her presence feels lighter now, like she knows she's no longer central, no longer trusted. And that's the real twist. Erasure doesn't just happen on screen. It happens in hearts, in decisions, in boundaries no one announces but everyone feels. I've learned to live with subtle power. It's not about control. It's about clarity. Clarity that tells you who values your presence. Clarity that allows you to choose your circle, not out of spite, but out of peace. That's the greatest gift our wedding gave me. Not just a moment of quiet revenge, but a deeper understanding of how I want to live. With grace, but not gullibility. With compassion, but not tolerance for manipulation. And yes, and with the right to edit. I keep the wedding video saved on a hard drive. I don't re-watch it often, but when I do, it brings me calm. Not because it's perfect, but because it's honest. Every frame, every voice, every captured laugh came from someone who showed up with love. That's all I ever wanted, to be surrounded by people who show up and stay in the frame. Everyone else, they can walk out or be cut. Either way, I won't be waiting for them anymore.